Thank you, Bastian Corla. The horror of the Srebrenica massacre in 1995 is totally unspeakable. 8,000 people murdered, mass graves, 440 children identified, of those that were identified, and of course 1,000 of the, or more than 1,000 I think, of the victims have still not been identified. It is an absolutely horrific moment in European history, and it is right that we should commemorate it, and it is right that we should learn the lessons so such things are not to be repeated. However, it is very, very important, if we are not to repeat those sort of horrors, that we are honest in our appraisal of what happened, how we failed, because if we don't, we risk repeating the mistakes of the past, and I would say that's exactly what we are doing. There is no question about the culpability of Milosevic, of Karadzic, of Mladic, that these people were rotten, racist nationalists who stirred people up to the most foul actions. But we are being one-sided if that is all we say. Let me read the following account from 1995. Evidence of atrocities. An average of 6 corpses per day continue to emerge. The corpses, some fresh, some decomposed, are mainly of old men. Many have been shot in the back of the head or had their throats slit. Others have been mutilated. Isolated pockets of elderly civilians report people recently gone missing or detained. Endless invitations for people, I'll tell you who they were, to return. Guarantees of citizen rights and property rights have gushed forth from all levels. This is an account by Robert Fisk. It's describing the ethnic cleansing of the Krajina and of Serbs in the Krajina after Srebrenica. Something that was effectively condoned by the Western powers that intervened, the NATO bombing that intervened on one side of the conflict and essentially allowed the Croats, who were led by an equally rotten racist, in the case of Franco Tuđman, a fascist sympathiser. But we said very little about his politics at the time, because it suited the interests of the West, who had encouraged the ethnic cleansing with the Vance-Owen plan, which mapped out, in advance of all this, the ethnic partition of the former Yugoslavia and encouraged the worst, most right-wing, nationalist and racist elements on all sides to ethnically cleanse people. And the consequences were disastrous for ordinary Croats, for Muslims and for many Serbs as well. And the reason why I think it is important to put that balance to what we are saying tonight and our culpability, the Western powers, should I say, culpability in all of this, is because that selective approach to horror, to war, to obscenity continues today. So, rightly, we condemn the Assad regime for its brutal suppression, the Russian support for them, suppression of their own people. Absolutely right. But we remain silent when it is Western allies that are encouraging similar obscenities and atrocities. We continue to fail to speak up about how, for example, Israel and Al-Qaeda and Turkey are manipulating the situation in Syria, now even threatening the safety of our troops in the buffer zone in the Golan Heights. We say nothing about, or do not speak loudly about how Britain and the United States and France arm Saudi Arabia, who in turn arm ISIS, and these forces manipulate the situation, leading to the sort of horrific atrocities that we are seeing for ordinary people across Syria. And then When those refugees seek to come to Europe, we allow 14,000 of those refugees to drown in the Mediterranean, men, women and children. We deny them we either deny them entry into the European Union, or we lock them up in direct provision centres when they get here, and treat them as subhuman. So, in remembering Srebrenica, we have to remember those lessons and end the sort of hypocrisy and double standards and cynical manipulations that allow those horrors to take place in the first place.